Welcome to 1,000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 866th night, she resumed, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the sons of the merchant sat down in the pavilion, they seated Nur al-Din in the midst on a rug of gold purple leather of al-Tarif, leaning on a pillow of miniver stuffed with ostrich down. And they gave him a fan of ostrich feathers, whereon were written these 2 couplets. A fan whose breath is fraught with fragrant scent, minding of happy days and times forespent, waft at time its perfumed air o'er face of noble youth on honor bent. Then they laid by their turbans and outer clothes, and sat talking and chatting, and inducing one another to discourse, while they all fixed their eyes on Nur al-Din, and gazed on his beauteous form. After the sitting had lasted an hour or so, up came a slave with a tray on his head, wherein were platters of china and crystal, containing viands of all sorts. For one of the youths had so charged his people before coming to the garden, and the meats were of whatever walketh earth, or winged air, or swimmeth water, such as a cattle grouse, and fat quails, and pigeon pullets, and mutton, and chickens, and the delicate fish. So the tray being set before them, they fell to, and ate their fill. And when they had made an end of eating, they rose from meat, and washed their hands with pure water, and musk-scented soap, and dried them with napery embroidered in silk and bugles. But to Nur al-Din they brought a napkin laced with gold red, whereupon he wiped his hands. Then coffee was served up, with each drank what he would, after which they sat talking, till presently the garden keeper, who was young, went away, and returning with a basket full of roses, said to them, What say ye, O my masters, to flowers? Quoth one of them, There is no harm in them, especially roses, which are not to be resisted. Answered the gardener, 'Tis well, but it is of our wont not to give roses, but in exchange for pleasant converse. So whoever would take naught thereof, let him recite some verses suitable to the situation. Now there were 10 sons of merchants, of whom one said, Agreed, give me thereof, and I will recite thee somewhat of verse apt to the case. Accordingly, the gardener gave him a bunch of roses, which he took, and at once improvised these 3 couplets. The rose is highest stead, I rate, for that her charms ne'er sedate. All fragrant flowers be troops to her, their general of high estate. Where she is not, they boast and vaunt, but when she comes, they stint their prat. Then the gardener gave a bunch to another, and he recited these 2 couplets. Take, O my lord, to thee the rose, recalling scent by musk beshed, like virginette by lover eyed, who with her sleeves enveiled head. Then he gave a bunch to a third, who recited these 2 couplets. Choice rose that gladdens heart to see her sight, of nad recalling fragrance exquisite. The branchlets clip her in their leaves for joy, like kiss of lips that never spake in sprite. Then he gave a bunch to the fourth, and he recited these 2 couplets. Seest not that rosary where rose a flowering display, mounted upon her steed of stalk those marvels manifold? And though the bud were ruby stone, and girded all around with chrysolite, and held within a little hoard of gold. Then he gave a posy to a fifth, and he recited these 2 couplets. Wands of green chrysolite bare issue, which were fruit like ingots of the growing gold, and drops a-dropping from its leaves were like the tears my languorous eyelids railed and rolled. Then he gave a bunch to the 6th person, and he recited these 2 couplets. O rose, thou rare of charms that dost contain all gifts and all a secret singular, thou art like the loved one's cheek, where a lover fond and fain of union sticks the gold dinar. Then he gave a bunch to a 7th, and he recited these 2 couplets. To rose, quoth I, what guards thy thorns to be put forth for all who touch thee cruelest injury? Quoth she, These flowery troops are troops of me, who be their lord with spines for armory. And he gave an 8th a bunch, and he recited these 2 couplets. Allah, save the rose which yellows a morn, florid, vivid, and likest the nugget ore, and bless the fair sprays that display such flowers, and mimic sun's gold-begilded bore. Then he gave a bunch to the ninth, and he recited these two couplets. The bushes of golden hue rose excite, and the love-sick lover joys manifold. 'Tis a marvel shrub watered every day with silvern lymph, and it fruiteth gold. Then he gave a bunch of roses to the 10th, and last, and he recited these two couplets. Seest not how the host of the rose display red hues and yellow and rosy filled? I compare the rose and her arming thorn to emerald lance piercing golden shield. And whiles each one had bunch in hand, the gardener brought the wine service, and setting it before them on a tray of porcelain arabesqued with red gold, recited these two couplets. Dawn heralds daylight, so wine passed round, old wine fooling sage till his wits he tine. Wot I not for its purest clarity, and 'tis wine in cup, or 'tis cup in wine. Then the gardener filled and drank, and cup went round till it came to Nur al-Din's turn, whereupon the man filled and handed it to him, but he said, This thing I wot it not, nor have I ever drunk therein, for therein is great offence, and the Lord of the Almighty hath forbidden it in his book. Answered the gardener, O my lord Nur al-Din, and thou forbear to drink only by reason of the sin? Verily Allah, extolled and exalted be he, is bountiful of sufferance, great forgiving, and compassionate, and pardoneth the mortalest sins. His mercy embraceth all things. Allah's rule be upon the poet who saith, Be as thou wilt, for Allah is bountiful, and when thou sinnest, feel thou not alarm. Beware of twofold sins, nor ever dare to give God partner or mankind to harm. Then quoth one of the sons of the merchant, My life on thee, O my lord Nur al-Din, drink of this cup. And another conjured him by the oath of divorce, and yet another stood up persistently before him till he was ashamed, and taking the cup from the gardener, drank a draught, but spat it out, crying, "'Tis bitter." Said the young gardener, O my lord Nur al-Din, knowest thou not that sweets taken by way of medicine are bitter? Were this not bitter, 'twould lack of the manifold virtues it possesses, among which are that it digesteth food, and disperseth cark and care, and dispelleth flatulence, and clarifieth the blood, and cleareth the complexion, and quickeneth the body, and hearteneth the hen-hearted, and fortifieth the sexual power in man. But to name all its virtues would be tedious. Quoth one of the poets, Well, drink, and Allah pardon sinners all, and cure of ills by sucking cups I'll find. Nor ought the sin deceive me, yet, said he, in it there be advantage to mankind. Then he sprang up without stay or delay, and opened one of the cupboards in the pavilion, and taking out a loaf of refined sugar, broke off a great slice, which he put into Nur al-Din's cup, saying, O my lord, and thou fear to drink wine because of its bitterness, drink now, for it is sweet. So he took the cup and emptied it, whereupon one of his comrades filled him another, saying, O my lord Nur al-Din, I am thy slave. And another did the like, saying, I am one of thy servants. And a third said, For my sake. And a fourth, Allah upon thee, O my lord Nur al-Din, heal my heart. And so they ceased not plying him with wine, each and every one of the 10 sons of merchants, till they had made him drink a total of 10 cups. Now Nur al-Din's body was virgin of wine-bibbing, or never in all his life had he drunken vine juice till that hour, wherefore its fumes wrought in his brain, and drunkenness was stark upon him, and he stood up, and indeed his tongue was thick, and his speech stammering, and he said, Company, by Allah, ye are fair, and your speech is goodly, and your place pleasant. But there needeth hearing of sweet music, for drink without melody lacks the chief of its essentiality, even as saith the poet, Pass round the cup to the old, and the young man too, and take the bowl from the hand of the shining moon. But without music, I charge you, forbear to drink. I see even horses drink to a whistled tune. Thereupon sprang the gardener lad, and mounting one of the young man's mules, was absent a while. after which he returned with the Korean girl, as she were a sheep's tail fat and delicate, or an ingot of pure silver and ore, or a dinar, or a porcelain plate, or a gazelle in the wold forlorn. She had a face that put to shame the shining sun, and eyes Babylonian, and brows like bows bented, and cheeks rose-painted, and teeth pearly-hued, and lips sugared, and glances languishing, and breasts ivory-white and tender, and slight, full of folds, and with dimples dight, and hips like pillows stuffed, and thighs like columns of Syrian stone, and between them what was something like a sachet of spices in wrapper swathed. Quoth the poet of her in these couplets: Had she shown her shape to idolaters' sight, they would gaze on her face, and their gods detest. And if it in the east to a monk she showed, he'd quit eastern posture and bow to west. As she crouched in the sea and the briniest sea, her lips would give it to the sweetest zest. And quoth another in couplets: Brighter than moon at full, with cold eyes she came, like does on chasing whips of lioness intent. Her night of murky locks let fall a tent on her, a tent of hair that lacks no pegs to hold the tent. And roses lighting up her roseate cheeks are fed by hearts and livers flowing fire for languishment. And spite her all the ages fair, to her they'd rise humbly and cry, The mead belongs to precedent. And how well saith a third bard: 3 things for ever hinder her to visit us, for fear of the intriguing spy, and eke the rancorous envier. Her forehead's lustre, and the sound of all her ornaments, and the sweet scent her cresses hold of the ambergris and myrrh. Grant with the border of her sleeve she hide her brow, and doff her ornaments. How shall she do to her scent away from her? She was like the moon when at fullest on its 14th night, and was clad in a garment of blue, with a veil of green over brow flower white, that all wits amazed, and those of understanding amated. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 867th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the gardener brought a girl whom we have described possessed of the utmost beauty and loveliness, and fine stature, and symmetrical grace, as it were, and she, the poet signified when he said, She came apparelled in a vest of blue, that mocked the skies, and shamed their azure hues. I thought thus clad she burst upon my sight, like summer moonshine on a wintry night. And how goodly is saying of another, and how excellent. She came thick veiled, and cried I, Oh, display that face like full moons bright, with pure white ray. Quoth she, I fear disgrace. Quoth I, Cut short this talk, no shift of days, thy thoughts affray. Whereat she raised her veil from fairest face, and crystal spray on gems began to stray, and I forsooth was fain to kiss her cheek, lest she complain of me on judgment day. And at such time before the Lord on high, we first of lovers were redressed to pray. So, Lord, prolong this reckoning and review, prayed I, that longer I may sight my May. Then said the young gardener to her, Know thou, O lady of the fair, brighter than any constellation, which illumineth air, we sought in bringing thee hither not, but that thou shouldest entertain with converse this comely youth, my lord, Nur al-Din, for he hath come to this place only this day. And the girl replied, Would thou hadst told me, that I might have brought what I have with me. Rejoined the gardener, O my lady, I will go and fetch it to thee. As thou wilt, said she, and he, Give me a token. So she gave him a kerchief, and he fared forth in haste, and returned after a while, bearing a green satin bag with slings of gold. The girl took the bag from him, and opening it, shook it, whereupon there fell out 32 pieces of wood, which she fitted one into another, male into female, and female into male, till they became a polished lute of Indian workmanship. Then she uncovered her wrist, and laying the lute in her lap, bent over it with the bending of mother over babe, and swept the strings with her fingertips, whereupon it moaned and resounded, and after its olden home yearned, it remembered the waters that gave it drink, and the earth whence it sprang, and wherein it grew, and it minded the carpenters who cut it, and the polishers who polished it, and the merchants who made it to their merchandise, and the ships that shipped it. And it cried, and it called aloud, and it moaned, and it groaned, and it was if she asked of it all things, and it answered her with the tongue of the case, reciting these couplets. A tree, while ere was I the bull-boy's comb, to whom for love I bowed my grass-green head. They moaned on me, and I their moaning learnt, and in that moan my secret all men read. The woodman fell me falling sands of fence, and slender lute of me, as view ye made. But when the fingers smite my strings, they tell how man, despite my patience, did me dead. Hence boon companions, when they hear my moan, distracted wax, as through by wine misled. And the Lord softens every heart to me, and I am hurried to the highmost stead. And the hall in charms excel fain glass my waist, gazelles of languid eyne and an houri maid. Allah ne'er part fond lover from his joy, nor live the loved one who unfriendly fled. Then the girl was silent a while, but presently taking the lute in lap, again bent over it as mother bendeth over child, and preluded it in many different modes. Then returning to the first, she sang these couplets. Would they, the lovers, seek without ado, he is his heavy grief had bid adieu. With him had vied the nightingale on bough, as one far parted from his lover's view. Rouse thee, awake, the moonlight's union night, and though such union woke the morning anew, this day the blamers take of us no heed, and lute strings bid us all joys ensue. Seest now how fourfold things conjoin in one, rose, myrtle, scents, and blooms of golden hue. Yea, here this day on the four chief joys unite, drink and dinars, beloved and lover true. So win thy worldly joys, for joys go past, and naught but story tales and legends last. When Nur al-Din heard the girl sing these lines, he looked on her with eyes of love, and could scarce contain himself for the violence of his inclination to her. And on likewise was it with her, because she glanced at the company who were present of the sons of the merchants, and she saw that Nur al-Din was amongst the rest as moon among stars, for that he was sweet of speech and replete with amorous grace, perfect in stature and symmetry, brightness and loveliness, pure of all defect. Then the breeze of morn softer than Tasnim Blanter, as saith one of the poets. By his cheeks unfading damask, and his smiling teeth I swear, by arrows that he feathers with the witchery of his air, by his sides so soft and tender, and his glances bright and keen, by the whiteness of his forehead and the blackness of her hair, by his arched imperious eyebrows, chasing slumber from my lids with their hues and nose, and hold me twixt rejoicing and despair. By the scorpions that he launches from his ringed, clustered brows, seeking still to slay his lovers with his rigorous unaware. By the myrtle of his whiskers and the rose of his cheek, by his lips incarnate rubies, and his teeth fine pearls and rare. By the straight and tender sapling of his shape, which for its fruit doth the twin pomegranates shining in his snowy bosom wear. By his heavy hips that tremble both in motion and repose, and the slender waist above them, all too slight their weight to bear. By the silk of his apparel, and his quick and sprightly wit, by all attributes of beauty that are fallen to his share. Lo, the musk exhales its fragrance from his breath, and eke the breeze from his scent the perfume borrows, that it scatters everywhere. Yea, the sun in all his splendor cannot with his brightness vie, and the crescent moon's a fragment that he from his nails doth pare. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease the telling of this tale for today. till it be morrow.